All right, guys. Notes for today. This is civil rights lecture number one. As we do this, again, you are free to take as many notes as you want, or no notes at all. You have this. You can download this video lecture to your computer. Whatever it is that you want to do here. Let's get started here with two types of segregation. You see here on the left-hand side, de jure segregation. De jure segregation is what we've talked about ever since Plessy versus Ferguson, 1896, separate but equal. These are segregation laws that the government enforces. As we look through the civil rights today, you'll notice that Martin Luther King Jr. will fight this type of segregation, de jure segregation. Well, what he'll realize, though, and what many blacks through the 1960s will realize, is that the other side of this is de facto segregation. De jure segregation can be defeated. Pass a law, it will reverse Jim Crow. We'll look at that today with a Supreme Court case. However, the other side of this, de facto segregation, this is segregation by customs. This is segregation by your culture. And I put on here white flight. There was no one during the 50s that said only white people can live in the suburbs. But that's what happened. You think about today's society. You look around in our lunchroom. You look around in just everyday life. It just is what it is. Whites tend to be with whites. Blacks tend to be with blacks. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing that we can pass a law. It's just the way our customs are. Some think maybe it's a bad thing, whatever it is you believe. It just is what it is. Now, what I need you to get out of this is de jure segregation. You can fight it. You can defeat it. You can never fight and defeat de facto segregation without changing someone's mind, without changing someone's customs. So as where de jure segregation is segregation by law, de facto segregation is segregation by customs. Those are two different things. And again, my focus today is Martin Luther King Jr. is going to fight de jure segregation. Later on, you're going to see someone who tries to fight de facto segregation by accepting de facto segregation. We'll start with Truman. Truman was the first to fight segregation. And actually, it almost cost him the 1948 election when many Southerners from the Democrat Party broke away and formed the Dixiecrats. He lost votes from the Southern Democrats. Reason being was he is the first president to attack segregation. He is the first to order the armed forces to be desegregated. And the Korean War was the first time that blacks and whites were able to fight together, not in segregated units. During the 40s, we also have a black baseball player who broke the color barrier, and that being Jackie Robinson. Just this past weekend, or the weekend before this one, Major League Baseball celebrated Jackie Robinson Day, where every Major League Baseball player wore the number 42 to celebrate the notoriety of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier and coming into a white baseball league. I'll flash pictures up here for you. Now, very important for today. I want you to look at the top right here. History likes to say that the civil rights movement start with Brown versus Board of Education. I like to teach the start of the civil rights movement through the murder of Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi, which we've looked at earlier. But really, this is where the civil rights movement hangs its hat. It starts with a little girl by the name of Linda Brown, who was ordered to attend an all-black school that was 21 blocks away. And if you look at the green right here, the white school that she should have attended was 4 blocks away from her home. Her and other families get together and they use the NAACP and Thurgood Marshall, which you see leading the march there, use the 14th Amendment to challenge the Supreme Court case of 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson. This is a landmark Supreme Court case because it is attacking, again, the earlier 1896 case of Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, when we talk about this, Plessy versus Ferguson said schools can be separate but equal. But who defined equal? That was the white man. So as you look here, black schools did not get the same amount of tax dollars that white schools did. And it's really sad to know that this student could not attend a school that was in her neighborhood. She had to attend a school that was 21 blocks away from her home. In the Supreme Court case, a unanimous decision by Chief Justice Earl Warren, which we'll look at later in the Warren Court, that separate facilities were not equal. And Brown versus Board of Education struck down Plessy versus Ferguson and the separate but equal clause. And there you see a picture of Chief Justice Earl Warren there. Again, it overturned Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, one of the parts of the Brown versus Board of Education ruling was that schools needed to be integrated, not segregated, but integrated at a deliberate speed. Now, what does that mean? Who declares deliberate speed? That meant that all schools in the South had to be integrated as fast as possible. Well, who determined fast as possible? It was left up to the state legislators to determine the deliberate speed and how long it would take them to desegregate their schools. This case was in 1954, and many Southern schools didn't really give in to the desegregation process all the way up into the 1970s. You see, here is some resistance from a governor in Georgia. Much like all other state leaders, we'll see here in a minute, in Arkansas, in Alabama, in Mississippi, many of them hung on to the fact that they didn't have to desegregate their schools. They could drag it on as long as they could. One of those cases was in Arkansas. And if you look at these 9 students here, these 9 students are in the Little Rock Central High School district. But if you look over here, Arkansas Governor Orville Fabus, he does not want to desegregate Little Rock Central High School. These 9 students do decide to attend Little Rock Central. They were sent away from the school by the Arkansas governor. Now, President Eisenhower orders the forced integration of these black students. And a week later, as you see, these 9 students are able to attend Little Rock Central High School, and they are escorted into Little Rock Central. They are members of the Arkansas National Guard that were put under federal government control, and they answer not to Governor Orville Fabus, but they answer to President Eisenhower. And President Eisenhower orders these troops to stay with them for an entire year. And as weird as this seems or sounds, these students would attend this school. The military guards would wait outside the door. As soon as class was over, they would escort them to and from class, as well as to and from home for an entire year. Now, that's going to be the end, again, of the first lecture. Again, the biggest point that I need to drive home to you guys here is the Brown versus Board of Education decision, which reversed Plessy versus Ferguson and stated that separate facilities were not equal and that the southern states needed to allow the integration of public schools. If you've watched Remember the Titans, that is a Hollywood video that the integration of schools during the 1950s was not welcomed, but but